They called us weak. They stole our names. They chained our hands and buried us on a volcanic hellworld to die digging fuel for their wars. But they didn't realize, when you bury a human alive, all you do is teach them how to burn. And now? Now we're not asking for freedom. We're here to turn their empire into ash. The ash never settled on Kedris 9. It clung to every breath, every eyelid, every whisper. Even silence here had weight. No birds, no wind, just the groaning of drills and the screams of overworked machines bleeding steam into the sulfur-choked sky. Unit 6657 gripped the handle of his mining spade. Beneath his calloused fingers, the tool buzzed faintly, charged with minimal shock current to keep him awake. Every so often, it jolted him. That was the point. If you passed out from exhaustion, the spade woke you up before the overseers did it with volts. He hadn't spoken in 3 years. Not because his tongue didn't work. Because no one here deserved his voice. Not the other meat units who gave up. Not the Zorith handlers who barked orders like they were speaking to livestock. And not the machines that measured labor by the kilogram of thermosite delivered per hour. Unit 6657. The overhead speaker croaked. Output below quota. Adjust efficiency or report to Detention Sector 5. He kept digging. The thermosite vein shimmered beneath the cracked wall, glowing with unstable energy. A single wrong strike and he'd be vaporized. That's how they'd killed the others last cycle. Claimed it was operator error. No funerals. Just another name off the roster. A weak cough echoed behind him. A boy barely 15 leaned against a jagged wall, blood on his lips, one hand missing. Unit 6657 stared at him. Not with pity. With calculation. The boy wouldn't survive the next cycle. His muscles were atrophied. His ribs showed. Please, the boy whispered. Just kill me before they find me. But before 6657 could speak, the ground gave out. A quake, sharper than the usual tremors. The floor beneath his boots split open, and the wall he'd been digging crumbled, revealing a dark cavity behind it, hidden beneath crusted rock. He fell, rolled once, twice, and landed hard in the pit. Thermosite veins glowed all around him, but something else caught his eye. A shard of metal. Curved. Etched. Not Zorith. Not Dominion issue. It was human. He brushed ash away, revealing a small black device, no larger than his palm. It flickered faintly. Somehow still alive. He pressed the center. A flash of blue light poured out, then steadied into a screen. Stygian Ash Protocol / //Earthcom Milsec Archive. He stared, breathless. A voice, distorted but unmistakably human, began to play. If you're hearing this, you are Earth's last soldier. They think you're gone. Good. Make them believe it longer. Then strike. Do not die in the dark. Set the galaxy on fire. The feed shifted: blueprints, field orders, doctrines. Strategies for war. Rebellion. Destruction. Everything the Zorith had burned. Buried. Hidden from this world. Unit 6657. The voice above called again. Detected in restricted zone. Report to upper surface for punishment. He didn't move. He watched footage of Earth soldiers in powered armor, flame-cleansing insected beasts. He read memos detailing how thermosite could be used not just to power ships, but to rupture planetary crusts if detonated in sequence. He stood, gripping the device. Something hot rose in his chest. Not anger. Not yet. Awareness. He climbed back up, eyes locked on the horizon. The next day, he stopped digging. The guards noticed. They shouted. He didn't respond. They struck him. He didn't flinch. They dragged him to the wall and bolted chains through his wrists, leaving him exposed beneath the sulfur rain. Still, he didn't speak. The other humans watched from the shadows, unsure what to make of him. He'd always worked quietly. Now he stared up at the sky like he was counting stars no one else could see. That night, someone unchained him. Not a guard. A girl. 19. Missing an eye. Why? She whispered. He finally spoke. Because they're afraid. She blinked. Of what? Of what we could become. She brought him scraps. Metal, old filters, busted fusion cells. Over the weeks, others joined. A medic. A former mechanic. A fighter with tattoos burned off his arms. No names. Just purposes. Just actions. They didn't need speeches. Asher, no longer Unit 6657, spoke only when needed. He shared the device's teachings. He trained them in old Terran tactics. He taught them how to see the mind not as a prison, but as a battlefield. They built a prototype, a timed thermosite ignition charge small enough to fit in a lunch tray. When it detonated under the Zorath food supply depot, the fire was silent and sudden. The handler shrieked as flames swallowed him, his metal carapace buckling from the heat. Asher watched it burn. The next day, the Dominion dispatched a Chiton Exarch, an enforcer bred for suppression. 7 feet tall. Mandibles like steel cleavers. He strode into the mine with a dozen guards and declared, "Rebellion detected. All work will halt. Until the guilty surrender, 10 will die per hour." Asher stepped forward. Alone. "I am guilty." The Exarch turned. "You speak." "I burn," Asher said. The Exarch raised a plasma lance. "Then burn alone." But as the weapon ignited, the floor erupted. Dozens of charges placed along the ceiling blew in sequence, collapsing the chamber. Dust and smoke filled the air. Screams followed. Asher pulled the Exarch down into the pit. 2 stories deep. Just the 2 of them. "You were bred for war," Asher whispered, circling the beast. "But we were born in fire." The Exarch lunged. Asher dodged, slashed at the creature's breathing vents with a sharpened pipe. Blood, thick and green, splattered the rock. They fought for 6 minutes. Asher broke his wrist. 2 ribs. He didn't stop. When the Exarch fell, coughing blood, Asher knelt over him. "Meat," the Exarch wheezed. "You die in darkness." Asher leaned close. "We are the darkness," and crushed his skull with a stolen Zorath shock boot. That night, the humans didn't speak. They gathered around the fire made from Exarch armor, and stared at the man they now followed. Not because he promised freedom. Because he promised fire. The silence in the mines didn't return. Not after the fire. Not after the Exarch's blood soaked into the cracked stone like oil. Rumors spread faster than the smoke that followed the explosion. The slaves didn't speak the name out loud, but they knew it. Asher. The man who burned a Zorath commander alive and walked out of the fire breathing still. Asher moved through the tunnels like he belonged to the shadows. His wrist was shattered, wrapped in fiber mesh torn from a coolant cable. He refused pain meds. Pain kept him sharp. "We don't have time for fear," he said as he knelt before a schematic carved into the dirt wall. "The Dominion thinks they've seen rebellion. They haven't seen us." Hallie handed him the fragment from the old fusion charger. Her face was gaunt, ash blackening the whites of her eyes. "We rigged this from what's left of the Exarch's pulse coil. Should amplify a charge 5-fold. Asher didn't look at her. "Good. I want the next patrol to vanish mid-step." Ren signed quickly with her fingers. She asked how many? "All of them," Asher said. "We're not warning them. We're starting a funeral." 2 days later, a Dominion hovercruiser descended into the refinery corridor with 12 Chiton enforcers riding its sides. They didn't see the ground beneath them glow faintly red. They didn't notice the ventilation hum shift pitch. The explosion was surgical. One moment, the cruiser hovered. The next, it disintegrated into a blossom of flame. Limbs flew. Armor turned to slag. The shockwave bent metal beams like paper. From the smoke, 3 human shapes walked calmly. Asher in front, flanked by Hallie and Ren. They carried nothing. Didn't need to. Messages spread through the mines in whispers and blood. The humans were no longer afraid. They were no longer waiting. And they had a leader who didn't care if he died, as long as he took the sky with him. The Zorith response was swift. Command sent down a signal from orbit. All mines on Kedris 9 were locked down. No food. No power. No rest cycles. Until the ringleaders were found. Ashur watched the panic swell. It didn't scare him. It proved the enemy was sweating. He stood before 100 miners, half-starved, half-broken, and all angry. "You've waited your whole lives for someone to save you," Ashur said, voice echoing across the dust-stained chamber. "That someone isn't coming. You are not being rescued. You are being tested." Someone yelled from the back. "They have warships." Ashur nodded. "And we have mines. You want air support? Blow a vent. You want artillery? We're standing on the most unstable explosive in the quadrant." He opened a crate and dropped thermosite charges onto the floor. The glow reflected in every eye. "They want us to fight like victims," he said. "We're not giving them the luxury." From that moment, the resistance had form. Structure. Cells formed. Sabotage squads. Smugglers. Tech riggers. The humans didn't have guns. They didn't need them. Hallie made pipe bombs from coolant valves. Ren turned broken trackchain into barbed tripwires. And Ashur taught them how to vanish. "Don't fight where they're strong," he said. "Fight where they're blind." In less than a week, 5 more Dominion facilities were taken offline. Oxygen recyclers vanished. Power cores were repurposed into ambush bombs. Security drones turned inward on their own guards. The turning point came when Ashur led a raid on the internal comms tower. 30 guards. 4 turrets. 10 minutes. He walked out carrying the transmitter core. They hacked the Zorith signal relay. Broadcasted a simple loop on every channel across Kedris 9. "We are the fire you tried to snuff. We are not asking for freedom. We are setting terms. Surrender or burn." Dominion leadership didn't reply. Instead, they dispatched the Pyre Warden, a mobile fortress designed for subjugation campaigns. 2 kilometers long, weaponized from spine to tail, lined with high-frequency suppression fields and incineration pods. It landed within sight of the mines. Burned 100 humans alive in a single sweep to make its point. Ashur watched from the ridge. Hallie clenched her jaw. "We're outmatched." "We always were," Ashur said. "So were the ones who burned empires down." That night he disappeared. No one saw him for 20 hours. He returned with Cletan. The room fell into stunned silence as the Zorith scientist stood beside Ashur, her carapace scorched, breathing ragged. "She defected," Ashur said. "Because she finally believes we're going to win." Cletan looked over the crowd. "Your enemy is fractured. They lie about it, even to themselves. They will not retreat. But they will crack. What's your price?" Hallie asked. Cletan held up a data key. "The Pyre Warden's core pathing. Weak points. Ventilation schematics. All of it." Ashur stepped forward. "We bring it down. Not just for the message. We strip its core. We build something worse. Something they'll never forget." "No survivors?" Ren signed. Ashur shook his head. "Survivors make memories. Ash makes legends." The plan was madness. But no one backed away. The next morning, 3 cells moved. One cell breached the rear supply route, mining through sulfur tunnels with hand drills and shoulder charges. The second infiltrated through waste vents, losing 2 to heat collapse. Ashur led the third. They wore scavenged armor, twisted into grotesque mimicry of Dominion troops. Enough to confuse sensors. Long enough. They reached the Warden's main vent core at 0500 hours. Hallie planted the final charge. "Once we light this, there's no turning back," she said. Ashur looked at her. There never was. The charges blew in perfect succession. The Warden's belly split open, fire erupting through its undercarriage like a second sunrise. Internal pressure systems failed. Reactor containment burst. The explosion lit the sky for 15 kilometers. Ashur stood on the ridge, backlit by the fire. "They built it to end us," he said. Hallie stood beside him, bleeding from her ribs. They should have built it with fireproof soles. The humans didn't cheer. They didn't dance. They stood in silence and watched the Dominion's god machine die screaming. Asher turned to the crowd. This is what happens when you teach slaves how to burn. The galaxy thought Kedris 9 had gone quiet. Dominion reports labeled the human unrest as contained. The term used was controlled flashpoint. But the truth was something else. The mind world wasn't quiet. It was waiting. The humans hadn't vanished. They were rebuilding, beneath the slag layers, behind crumbled sectors, in tunnels the Zorith sensors no longer scanned. Every corridor was a trap. Every shadow a knife. Asher stood over the smoldering remains of what used to be a Dominion command post. The walls still oozed from the blast. Hallie stepped beside him, boots crunching over melted carapace fragments. They stopped sending patrols, she said. They're not scared of us anymore, Asher replied. They're scared of being seen losing. Across the complex, survivors were counting bodies. Zorith, mostly. One human casualty. Voluntary. Ren had taken out an entire dropship with a back-loaded fusion drill. The blast leveled 2 guard towers. She hadn't screamed. She hadn't hesitated. Cletan arrived, eyes flicking with unease. They're moving fleet assets. I intercepted chatter from the Dominion relay, full eradication protocol. No prisoners. Extermination cleansing. They've stopped pretending, Asher said. Good. This isn't a skirmish anymore, she warned. It's genocide. It always was. They just got tired of losing to their own food chain. She handed him a holomap. They're deploying the orbital lance. A kinetic weapon precision-fired from high orbit. Designed to punch through bunker worlds. How long? Hallie asked. 3 days. Maybe less. They'll fire it straight into Sector 12. Asher stared at the flickering map. That's where the children are. We can't move them all in time, Hallie said. The tunnels won't hold up. The exits are flooded. Then we don't move them, Asher said. We make sure they never fire. The plan was unspoken. Everyone knew what it meant. A direct assault. They'd never done one before. It went against everything they'd learned. But now the war had changed. There were no longer options. Only outcomes. Asher gathered the fighters. 57 remained combat-ready. Each carried reconfigured Dominion tech, hand-welded together with thermite tape and rusted determination. We're not marching to die, Asher told them. We're marching to be remembered. He pointed to the sky, where the clouds shimmered faintly. They're up there right now, planning how to erase us. And we're down here sharpening rocks. A few laughed bitterly. Most stayed silent. I don't care if we win today, he said. I care that when they see us coming, they feel fear. That we teach them one lesson before we go: never mistake silence for surrender. They hit the launch tower at night. Not with stealth, those days were gone. This was spectacle. Noise. Heat. Fury. The tower stood 600 meters tall, laced with beam emitters and scanner drones. Asher led the charge through the eastern breach, tearing open the armored hatch with an explosive rig from a pressure tank. Guards swarmed. The sky turned red with plasma fire. Hallie lobbed 2 thermal jars into the heart of the sentry nest. Screams followed. Ren was already ahead, climbing the outer scaffolding like a shadow in hell, planting line mines on support beams. Cletan tapped into the tower's uplink node and flooded the system with falsified commands. All internal targeting compromised, she muttered. They're blind on their own kill switch. Asher pressed forward, kicking down the control room door. A Zorith technician lunged. Asher caught him mid-strike, crushed his wrist, and slammed his head into the console. Activate external override, Asher said. Cletan typed rapidly. Done. Orbital lance locked out. Hallie blinked. That's it. No, Asher said. Now we finish it. Outside, the fight was shifting. Dominion reinforcements had arrived, mechanized quadrupeds bristling with anti-personnel turrets. Ren was wounded, her shoulder a mess of flesh and melted fiber. She waved off help, stood, and kept fighting. Asher turned to Hallie. "You still have the payload?" She nodded. "Rigged for cascade failure. Once the tower's base ignites, the entire lance array will collapse." "Good," he said. "I'll handle the ignition chamber." "That's suicide." He looked at her. "They sent us to die here. I'm just giving them what they paid for." He descended into the ignition core, flanked by 2 rookies, barely old enough to have names. Neither flinched. Neither hesitated. The chamber glowed red. The lance's fusion rails hummed with stored power. If the charge detonated here, it wouldn't just destroy the tower. It would cut through the fleet's low orbit like a blade through bone. He placed the core charges at the magnetic stabilizers. Each hissed as it activated. "Final sequence ready," Cletan said over comms. "You have 90 seconds. Asher turned to the 2 young fighters. "You know what comes next." They nodded. He removed his rank plate and handed it to one of them. "You carry this. You live." He pressed the detonator into the other's hand. "You push this. You choose when." He turned toward the flame core. The temperature made his skin blister immediately. But he didn't stop. They didn't watch him go. Above, the remaining humans were retreating, covering each other, pulling the wounded back into the smoke. The lance tower cracked. Energy screamed through it. The metal superstructure twisted, buckled, and lit up with streaks of fire. From orbit, the Dominion fleet watched as the weapon they meant to fire was turned on itself. Seconds later, the explosion breached the atmosphere. A fire column erupted, stretching into the sky like a spear thrown by a god. 4 Dominion cruisers caught in the blast radius vaporized. The rest scattered. On the ground, silence returned. But it wasn't the silence of slavery. It was the silence of victory. Later, as the ash settled, Hallie found the rookies. One was gone. The other knelt by the wreckage, still holding Asher's rank plate. She didn't speak. She just stared up at the sky, now cracked with the remnants of what had been a weapon. Asher was gone. But his name wasn't. His name was carved into the crater wall by a dozen hands. He lit the sky. The Dominion's fleet limped in silence. 4 capital ships gone. Half a dozen crippled. They'd never anticipated losing a warship to a slave uprising. The commanders rotated encryption keys and blamed internal sabotage. But their silence was louder than their losses. Back on Kedros 9, Hallie limped through the crater, the sky still smoldering where the lance had once pierced orbit. She touched the scorched metal wall, fingers tracing Asher's last command, a data relay embedded in the collapsed tower. Cletan stood beside her, silent. "You cracked it?" Hallie asked. Cletan nodded. "It's not just schematics or battle logs. It's everything." "Everything?" Cletan projected a feed into the air. Earth. Blue. Alive. Green continents glowing beneath swirling white clouds. Cities orbiting above it like rings. "They lied to us," Cletan said. "Earth wasn't destroyed. The Zoreth didn't burn it. They exiled it. Isolated the last human bastions so they could study you like a virus." Hallie's voice went flat. "Why?" "Because of what you become under pressure. Your adaptability. Your spite." Another figure appeared, an Earth Command officer recorded decades ago. "If this message reaches a liberated human, know this, we did not forget you. We built the Revenant fleet in secret. The moment your signal breaks the block, we come." Hallie turned away. "Asher triggered this, didn't he?" Cletan nodded again. "He knew what he was doing." A signal had gone out. From the burning tower, from the molten wreckage of Dominion arrogance, a pulse of data fired through hyperspace. Earth was listening. The humans regrouped underground. Not many remained. Less than 40 fighters now. But morale had shifted. They no longer moved like prey. They moved like wolves. Hallie addressed them by torchlight. We've been waiting for someone to save us. Turns out, we were the rescue all along. The group split into operations. Cletan provided intelligence on Dominion fallback patterns. Their next move was obvious. They would send in the silencers. Sora's shock units engineered for extermination, not capture. Hallie spoke calmly. They want to erase us before Earth arrives. Wren bared her teeth. She signed. Then we make them regret waiting this long. 3 nights later, the silencers landed. No communication. No declaration. Just dropships cutting through cloud layers and hissing open to release 6-legged exobeasts clad in reactive plating and flame blades. The humans didn't hide. They welcomed them. Hallie led them into the lower sectors, booby-trapped with failing power conduits, ducting steam, and rigged storage tanks. The first silencer to enter was vaporized by a reignited coolant line. The second lost a limb to a spike gear trap built from old mining rigs. By the time they realized they were in a maze, it was too late. Cletan hacked their vision feeds, blinding them with looped footage while Wren struck from the rafters with magnet-laced blades that jammed their neural servos. It wasn't a battle. It was dissection. Only one silencer escaped. Hallie let him go. Tell them what you saw, she whispered. Tell them what we've become. The Dominion command spiraled. They had never imagined that slaves would respond not with surrender, but escalation. Their internal comms leaked panic. The phrase began to circulate, the Fireborn Doctrine. It wasn't a name Ashur had given it. It was a name the enemy had invented to explain why they were losing. Meanwhile, the skies above Kedros 9 began to shift. Cletan confirmed it first. Hyperwarp anomalies detected. Multiple vectors. 10 ships, no Dominion signature. Earth had arrived. But they didn't come broadcasting peace. The first shot came from the Atlas Revenant, a Terran dreadnought painted black, its hull scarred from old wars. It targeted the outer ring of the Dominion fleet and cleaved 2 destroyers in half before they had time to raise shields. On the surface, Hallie dropped to one knee, eyes wide as the Terran banners lit up the night like a second sunrise. Cletan watched the skies. Do you see it? I do, Hallie whispered. Earth's fleet unleashed coordinated strikes with surgical precision. No collateral damage. Every shot calculated to kill infrastructure, not life. The message was clear: we remember our people. The Dominion tried to retreat. But it was chaos. Their own ships blocked escape lanes. The Atlas locked down comms, jamming every exit corridor. Then, for the first time in recorded Dominion memory, the Central Command beacon blinked red. Surrender initiated. The humans didn't cheer. They watched, solemn, tired, and hollow. This wasn't revenge. It was validation. Earth's landing teams arrived an hour later. Marines in power armor. Medics in white. Technicians who gaped in horror at the state of Kedros 9. One approached Hallie. Are you the commander? She hesitated. He was. The Marine saluted. Then you are now. She nodded once. We held. He looked around. You built this? No. They built it to break us. We turned it into a weapon. The Earth teams offered extraction. The survivors declined. Wren signed fiercely. She says we stay. Cletan translated. This planet isn't a tomb anymore. It's a message. Hallie turned to the Terran officers. We need more charges. More reach. Dominion has other camps. Other Kedros 9s. The Marine hesitated. You want to keep fighting? No, Hallie said. I want to finish what he started. Behind her, a wall bore new graffiti, freshly scorched into the stone by a plasma torch. We were never slaves. We were embers. And now, we're the fire. The message spread faster than the fire ever did. From Kedros 9 to the shattered orbiting sectors, across the black market channels and fringe colonies, to the refugee sectors hidden between gas giants and shattered moons, the truth flared like a supernova. Humans had not only survived, they had won. Against the Dominion. Against the odds. Against extinction. Hallie stood before the old broadcast pylon, now converted into a high-gain relay, its signal pulsing outwards like a heartbeat. Behind her, the last of the surface fires cooled, smoke curling from craters left by Dominion landers and orbital lances. The mine shafts no longer glowed with agony. They glowed with purpose. "We've got full spectrum access," Cletan said, brushing soot from her arms. "Every Dominion channel. Every relay they used to surveil you, we own it now." Hallie didn't smile. "Then let's make them choke on the sound of us." She stepped to the console, keyed the command, and stared into the hollow lens of the broadcast. The red indicator blinked. "Live. To the Dominion," she said evenly. "This is your final notice." She let the silence stretch, each second a blade. "You taught us to obey. To mine. To bleed. You made us numbers. Meat. Systems to be optimized. But you never erased what made us human. You only taught us how to weaponize it." Another pause. Every colony, every ship, every chained worker was watching. "You thought we were weak. You forgot what fire does when it's buried deep enough." She leaned forward. "We didn't rise. We ignited." She cut the transmission. Across the galaxy, the effects were immediate. Uprisings triggered in 6 different sectors. In the slave pits of Darvanex, human miners used mining lasers to tunnel into barracks and detonate oxygen lines. In the gladiator arenas of Azikel Prime, a former champion disarmed his handler and snapped his spine live on stage. On Varlo Station, a cook slipped an incendiary compound into the station's recycling tanks, causing a hull breach that collapsed an entire docked Dominion cruiser. The Dominion scrambled. But they were no longer hunting fugitives. They were drowning in a storm they thought impossible. On Kedros 9, preparations accelerated. Hallie convened the War Council in the reconditioned thermosite chamber, where once they'd bled to fuel Zorath engines. Now, it served as the forge of strategy. "We have 37 confirmed human enclaves across known space," Cletan explained, tapping holographic markers. "Most under Dominion rule. Scattered. Fragmented. They're not anymore." Wren signed, her hand motioned sharp. Hallie translated aloud. "They've seen what we did. They know it can be done." Wren nodded, then raised one finger. "One target." Hallie looked to the map. The Dominion throne world. "No," someone said. "That's suicide." "No," Hallie answered. "That's justice." The Dominion core world of Varnak was the political and military heart of the Empire. Heavily fortified. Constantly surveilled. And most importantly, symbolic. "You burn the capital," Hallie said. "You burn the illusion of invincibility." Cletan scowled. "It's not just a military target. It's a message. And that kind of message costs blood." Hallie looked down. Her fingers grazed Asher's rank plate, still hanging around her neck. "Then we bleed," she said. "But we do it on our terms." The plan required coordination between 9 human cells, most of whom had never made contact. The Atlas Revenant jump systems, ferrying weapons, technicians, encryption gear. Earth Command didn't try to take control. They watched. Listened. Learned. They had come to rescue slaves. Instead, they found an army. Operation Black Echo was set for 0400 Varnak time. A simultaneous multi-vector incursion, focused not on conquest, but detonation. Human saboteurs would breach the Varnak power rings, bury thermosite beneath the central pillar, and collapse the Dominion's planetary command hub into its own magnetic trench. One shot. One planet. One fire. Hallie led the core strike team. Wren handled demolition. Cletan falsified Zorath biometric signatures to bypass the gate's sentries. Each human wore scavenged Dominion armor, spray-coated in ash black and marked with an old Earth war sigil, Phoenix inverted, burning downward. They slipped through the outer docks at 0338. 2 guards noticed too late. Wren made no sound as she cut their throats. They advanced through the maintenance tiers, where Dominion aristocrats never walked. The stench of chemical wash mixed with thermal coolant. No patrols. Just rotating cameras and drones. Cletan jammed the feed. 15 minutes, she hissed. Wren planted charges at every support column leading to the throne spire's underbelly. Hallie counted them off, one by one. 8. 9. 10. Then a voice crackled on the comms. Spire security has been compromised. Internal breach detected. Cletan cursed. They spotted us. Countermeasures active. We're about to have company. Wren signed, too late to stop now. Then we finish it loud. Hallie snapped. Wren, ignite the outer shell. Collapse the west flank. Box them in. She opened her comms to the other human cells. This is Ember 1. They know. Light the fuse. From orbit, Earth's fleet blacked out all Dominion traffic. No calls for help. No orders. Just silence. The first explosion cracked the ground like a scream. The western spire split, toppling sideways into the surrounding barracks. Wren was gone, last seen holding the ignition line while Dominion troops descended. Hallie charged forward with the remaining squad, straight into the throne chamber. The overlords inside, tall, regal, eyes glowing with artificial intelligence enhancements, stood frozen in disbelief. A slave. Here. Hallie raised a Dominion lance. From Kedris, with love. She hurled the spear into the primary power conduit. The chamber erupted. She didn't feel the ceiling collapse. She only heard the screams before the world went white. Above, the Atlas Revenant watched from low orbit. The throne world fractured. The sky ignited. The ground split, swallowing towers, monuments, and pride. A relay pinged. Transmission incoming. A final message, pre-recorded by Hallie, broadcasted as Varnak burned. To the ones who called us less, we buried our dead. Then we buried your legacy. We are not your harvest. We are your reckoning. And every star you thought was yours, belongs to us now. The last shot showed the Phoenix symbol. This time, it burned upward,